All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're looking at something that feels, honestly, a bit like magic to a lot of people, but is actually incredibly logical. We're talking about HTML, the fundamental language of the web. The big takeaway I want you to have by the end of our time together is that web design isn't some impenetrable black box. It's really just a highly structured language that anyone can easily read, understand, and yet even manipulate. Think of it less like complex mathematics and way more like learning the blueprint of a building. In fact, our source material kicks things off with a pretty fantastic question. Have you ever seen a web page and wondered, hey, how did they do that? I know I definitely have. We all click around these beautiful, complex websites every single day, but we rarely peek behind the curtain. Well, today, we're going to deconstruct that curtain entirely. We are taking a journey straight into the raw code of a web page to see exactly how it's put together, piece by piece. Section 1. The HTML document skeleton. To really wrap our heads around this, I want you to imagine we're building a house. And, just like any house, before you can put up drywall or paint the rooms, you absolutely need a sturdy, invisible foundation. Every single house needs a foundation permit, a piece of paper that says exactly what kind of building this is going to be. Well, on a web page, that permit is the doc type declaration. The syntax is pretty straightforward. An open bracket, an exclamation point, the word doc type, a space, the word HTML, and a closing bracket. This crucial declaration must appear only once, right at the very top of the page, before any other tags. Now, a quick heads up about this, it isn't case sensitive at all. You can type it however you like, though standard practice is usually to capitalize doc type. And typing it exactly like this tells the web browser, whether you're using Chrome, Safari, Edge, whatever, that we're using HTML5. That's the modern standard for web pages. It simply helps the browser display everything correctly. Here we can see the raw skeleton of our web page house in action. At the very top, there's that doc type declaration we just talked about, making sure the browser knows exactly what's coming. Right beneath that is the HTML tag. Notice how there's an opening HTML tag at the top and then a closing HTML tag with that little / at the very bottom. Those tags act as our property lines. They wrap around the entire document. Every single thing related to this specific web page lives inside those two tags. Then, nestled right inside, we have the body tags. And this is the good stuff, the visible part of the HTML document. Literally everything you actually see, read, and interact with on your screen lives strictly between the opening and closing body tags. It's just beautifully organized. Section 2. Text. Headings and paragraphs. Okay, so now that we've got the sturdy foundation and the exterior walls of our house defined by those HTML and body tags, let's start bringing some basic furniture inside. The most common thing on any web page is, of course, text. But on a web page, not all text is created equal, right? You need titles, subtitles, and standard text to actually make things readable. HTML uses tags to establish the structural hierarchy instantly. The H1 tag defines the absolute most important heading on a page, usually your main title. On the totally opposite end of the spectrum, the H6 tag defines the least important heading. It's just a simple descending scale from 1 down to 6. It is honestly fascinating to see this hierarchy in the raw code. We've got an H1 wrapped around this is heading 1, an H2 wrapped around this is heading 2, and so on. The visual hierarchy of the page just naturally cascades down simply by changing that single number inside the brackets. It's an incredibly efficient way for the developer to tell the browser exactly how big and bold that text should appear, without having to write out complex styling commands for every single sentence. But what about all the normal text? The regular sentences and descriptions sitting underneath those bold headings. Well, for that, HTML gives us perhaps the simplest tag of all, the P tag, which just stands for paragraph. Anytime we want to create a standard block of text, we simply wrap our sentence in an opening P tag and a closing P tag. It neatly sections off our text into perfectly readable paragraphs. Section 3. Adding links and attributes. So our house has walls, it has structure, and it has some text furniture inside. But a house sitting completely alone in the dark isn't very useful, is it? We need to wire our house so it connects to all the other houses out there on the internet. In HTML, we do that using links. But before we get to the exact code for a link, we need to understand a quick new concept: attributes. So far, our tags have been pretty simple commands, right? Make this a paragraph, make this a heading. But sometimes a tag needs a little bit more context to do its job. Attributes are exactly that. They're elements that provide additional, highly specific information about HTML tags. You can basically think of them as extra instructions we give to a basic tag to make it behave exactly how we want. And here's how this applies directly to links. HTML links are defined with the A tag, but just slapping an A around a word isn't going to cut it. The browser actually needs to know where the link is supposed to take you. Enter the attribute. We start with our opening A tag, but inside that bracket, right before it closes, we add our extra instruction, href equals, and then the URL in quotes. That href, that is the attribute. It explicitly specifies the link's destination. Then we close the bracket, type the text we actually want the user to click, something like, "This is a link," and finally add our closing A tag. By combining a basic tag with a specific attribute, we have successfully wired our house to the rest of the web. Section 4. Visuals. Adding HTML images. Text and links are great, sure, but the modern web is incredibly visual. It is time to paint our house and hang some pictures on the walls by introducing HTML images. Now, HTML images are defined with the appropriately named IMG tag, but you'll notice right away that this tag works a bit differently than our heading or paragraph tags. Unlike those simple text tags that just wrap around words, an image tag doesn't actually contain any text to display. Instead, it relies entirely on a specific set of attributes to pull a picture from a server and render it on your screen. Let's break that down into a really simple, easy-to-digest checklist. To actually make an image appear, you need to provide 4 key attributes inside your IMG tag. First up is the SRC attribute. This stands for source, and it's simply the file name or the exact location of the image you want to show. Second is the alt attribute. This provides alternative text, which is a written description of the image. And this is absolutely crucial for accessibility. Like if someone is using a screen reader or even if the image just fails to load because of a bad connection. And finally, we have the width and height attributes. These do exactly what you'd expect. They give the browser explicit dimensions so it knows exactly how large to draw the picture on the screen. Section 5. The X-ray vision superpower. All right, we've covered the basic building blocks. You know the skeleton, the headings, the paragraphs, the links, and the images. Now, just like I promised earlier, I am going to give you the ultimate blueprint tool. I'm going to show you how to get literal X-ray vision so you can inspect the code of any house you ever visit online. Let's say you're on a web page, you see an amazing layout, and you think, how on earth did they pull that off? Well, you can just look at their raw HTML source code. It's surprisingly easy. Step 1, open up any HTML page in your browser. Step 2, you can either hit Ctrl+U on your keyboard or just right-click anywhere on the page. Step 3, select View Page Source from the menu. Boom! A new tab opens up containing the raw, unfiltered HTML matrix that builds that entire page. Every doc type, every heading, every paragraph, right there for you to read. But we can actually take this superpower even further with a built-in tool called Inspect Element. Let's say you don't want to see the code for the whole page. You just want to know what heading tag they used for one specific title. Just right-click directly on that element or even a blank area next to it and choose Inspect. A panel will pop up showing you exactly what that specific piece of the page is made of. And here is where it gets incredibly fun. You can actually edit the HTML right there on the fly in that panel. You can change the text, swap an H1 to an H6, and just watch the live web page change right on your screen. Don't worry, you aren't permanently breaking their website. It completely resets as soon as you refresh the page, but it is the ultimate sandbox for testing and learning exactly how code manipulates a live design. We've definitely covered a lot of ground today, from the foundational doc type and the skeletal tags, through styling text, linking out into the world, embedding imagery, and finally unlocking those X-ray tools to study the web around you. The curtain has been completely pulled back. You are no longer just a passive consumer of web pages. You now have the foundational tools to be a builder. So the only question left to ask is, now that you know how to read the web, what will you build? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I seriously can't wait to see what you create.